Hello everyone, always good to see you. So in today's video, we'll be exploring the topic of academic English. So at uni, when you study at university or when you go to college, and if your studying is in the English language, the type of English that you use in your university life, in your academic studies at uni, is pretty different to the everyday English that you use in your normal life. And that's why we say that academic English is quite special. That's why we have to dive into it in some of our videos, because some of the viewers are university students, so it's crucial for them to understand the key concepts about this variety of English so that they can do well at university, especially when it comes to asking them to present things like projects or research papers and so forth. So today is some sort of like an introduction to this type of English and how it's different from our normal everyday life English. As a matter of fact, many of the words used in academic English are actually used in everyday life. But the thing is, when you use them in academic contexts, they have slightly different meanings to the meanings that they normally have. I'll exemplify this concept using three words, which are discipline, underline, and solid. So in normal daily life, in everyday life, discipline means the ability to control yourself and the ability to control your behavior. It's also an expressive word that describes the standard of morals or the ethical standard that someone exhibits. So this is the normal meaning for the word in everyday life. We say, for instance, as an example to highlight this meaning, that standards of discipline in schools have recently declined a lot. Standards of discipline at schools have declined. So this means that students at schools are not as disciplined as they used to be in the past. I'm talking about them these days. But in academic English, the word discipline has a completely different meaning. It means a field of study or an area of a study. For instance, you say something like artificial intelligence or AI is a relatively new discipline. AI is a relatively new discipline. So discipline here doesn't mean controlling your behavior or watching your morals and ethical values. No, it means a field of study or an area of study. And the example highlights that by saying that nanotechnology is a relatively new discipline, or by saying that artificial intelligence is a relatively new discipline. Also for the word underline, underline is a verb. In everyday normal English, underline means that you draw a line under something. For example, you might say on a form or in an application, this sentence, underline your family name on the form. Underline your family name on the form. This means draw a line under your family name. But in academic English, underline means emphasizes. So if something underlines something, it doesn't mean that it draws a line under it, but it means that it emphasizes it somehow. Let's have an example to highlight this meaning. You can say, for instance, that this research underlines the importance of international trade agreements. So this research underlines, which means emphasizes, which means assures, it underlines the importance of international trade agreements. So as you can see, underline in everyday life means draw a line under something. Underline in academic English means to emphasize something and give it the importance it deserves. The third word, before we move on to the next point, is the word solid. Solid is an adjective. So discipline was a noun, underline is a verb, and solid, this is the third word in this comparison, solid is an adjective. In everyday normal life, solid means that this thing, which we describe as solid, is neither liquid nor gas. You say, for example, the lake was frozen solid, maybe in Sweden or maybe in Denmark, these countries are characterized by very cold climates. So in winter, if there is a lake, this lake might become solid. So you say that the lake was frozen solid, meaning that it was not liquid anymore. If something is solid in everyday English, it means it's neither liquid nor gas. But in academic English, if you describe something as solid, you have another meaning. If something is solid, it means that it's certain or safe or is reliable enough. You can depend on it. It's dependable. Example to show that sense, we say that we have no solid evidence. We have no solid evidence, which means that we don't have any certain evidence or sure evidence that radiation has caused the problem. So these three words, as we compared and contrasted them in academic English and in everyday or normal English, underline or emphasize the fact that you can have the same words in academic English and in everyday English, but they will have completely different meanings in the two contexts. Right. Also, in academic English, one of the fundamental components of this variety of English is written English, because university students are always asked to do assignments and to finish projects and to compile presentations and to do research papers and so on. So in writing, academics are university professors and lecturers. They use, in writing, they use many expressions which are neutral. Neutral means that these expressions are neither formal nor informal. They are neutral. But these academics also in their writing, they use formal expressions which are not common in everyday language. So some of the expressions that they use are formal. For example, let me give you some examples about some formal and informal words which are used by academics. So they might write a word like try, or use a word like try, the verb try, in everyday English. In a formal context, they will use another formal alternative like attempt. Attempt can be a formal alternative to the verb try. They can use a word like almost or more or less. So they can use either almost or more or less in everyday language. But in formal English, they use another word which is virtually. So virtually is a synonym to almost, but it's a formal context word. In everyday English, they say or they write only, but in formal contexts, they replace it with another word which is solely. So only is replaced by solely in formal context. Instead of saying typical in everyday English, typical, it's typical of you to do that, which means that that's the normal thing from you. This is the expected thing from you. That's in the normal contexts or the neutral contexts, but in academic contexts or formal contexts, they might use a word like characteristic. For instance, they say it's characteristic of this species of animals to hibernate in winter. It's characteristic, which means it's typical, of this species of animals or of birds to hibernate in winter. They can also replace a word like mainly or mostly with another formal alternative, which is like, for example, primarily. So instead of saying mainly or mostly, instead of writing these words, they say primarily. So the point I'm trying to make here is that academics, being university professors or lecturers, they use, of course, everyday terms in their writing and in their spoken language, but they also resort to some formal alternatives or formal language items in their writing and in their speaking quite often. However, when they are given lectures or giving classes, they might use very informal vocabulary. For example, you might find a professor talking to a student or to a group of students, telling them, have a shot, have a shot at doing task number 3. So have a shot, this is an idiom which means try to do task number 3. So instead of saying attempt to do task number 3, instead of saying that in such a formal manner, in a class or in a lecture, they might address their students by using an informal alternative, like telling them, for example, okay, have a shot at doing task number 3. So as you can see, at the end of the day, academics are humans. They might use everyday terms, everyday English language, but also in a lot of instances, they turn to some formal language, academic language, like the language we're trying to highlight in this series of episodes about academic English. Also, it is very important when you learn academic English to know that there are some words that might look quite similar, but they are different in meaning. Look at these two words, for example, prime and primary. So both of them are adjectives. Prime means excellent in quality or value. You can have that in an example, for instance, by saying the building is a prime example of the 1920s architecture. The building is a prime example of the 1920s architecture, which means that it's an excellent example, a high value example, or a high quality example. So that's the meaning of prime, excellent in value or quality. Primary, on the other hand, means main or most important. Example, the group's primary concern is to protect human rights. The group's primary concern is to protect human rights. This means that their main concern, their most important concern, is to protect human rights. So be careful of these words, which might look quite similar, but they are different in their meanings and of course different in their spellings, because these words can be quite confusable in the contexts of academic English. Maybe the last feature I'd like to highlight here in our video today about academic English is noun phrases. Noun phrases. So academic English uses a lot or puts a lot of information into noun phrases rather than spending it out over the whole sentence. So academic English prefers to resort to putting a lot of information into noun phrases rather than spreading out this information over the entire sentence. For example, study this sentence with me. Radiation was accidentally released over a 24-hour period, damaging a wide area for a long time. Again, radiation was accidentally released over a 24-hour period, damaging a wide area for a long time. That's a pretty tedious and lengthy sentence. An academic, a professor or a lecturer, on the other hand, might shorten this sentence a little bit by resorting to using some noun phrases in it. So they might express the same idea in the same sentence as follows. The accidental release of radiation, the accidental release of radiation over a 24-hour period caused widespread long-term damage. So instead of saying radiation was accidentally released, he or she used the accidental release of radiation. Instead of saying damaging a wide area for a long time, he or she says caused widespread long-term damage. And for you to be able to utilize such a style in your academic English or in your academic language, you have to be familiar with what we call word families. So each word in English has a word family, meaning that you have the noun, the verb, the adjective, and the adverb forms of this word. For instance, a word like accident, that's a noun. The adjective from it is accidental, and the adverb is accidentally. So you have to be familiar with all the members of the word family so that you can mix and match the words when you use them, either in your spoken language or in your written language. Another noun is quantity. The verb from that noun is quantify, and the adjective is quantifiable, whereas the adverb is quantifiably. So these are two examples of word families that any academic English user should be good at, because the more word families you know, the more extensive your vocabulary base becomes, which is going to assist you big time in your journey in academic English or in academia when you study at college or university. Here we come to the end of our video today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful, and stay tuned for our next episodes, whether they are going to be about academic English or they are going to be about any other aspects of the language. I always make sure that my videos tackle different aspects of the language. So you will find in my channel videos tackling English grammar, English vocabulary, English pronunciation, academic English, business English. You'll find some everyday English or street English like slang and idioms. You will find tips on how to improve your conversational skills, reading and writing, and also your academic skills. Your conversational skills like listening and speaking, and your academic skills like reading and writing. So stay tuned for our upcoming content, and I hope that my content appeals to you, and it's always a pleasure to meet you in my videos. Thank you very much for your attentive listening, and I look forward to seeing you in our next session. Have a great day.